Hello everybody and welcome back to another not applicable Formula 1 video. I hope that you're well and I hope you are getting ready for Budapest, even though it is a week away. Unfortunately, there is no live streams this weekend, but we will be back for Hungary next weekend. We just have to find a way to fill the time in between. And luckily for us, the Formula 1 2021 game has just been released. And I don't know about you, but I have lost a lot of my life already to F1 2021. I've been sinking the hours into it, especially on Twitch with you guys. And if you don't follow me on Twitch, I'd highly recommend it because it is really fun streaming with you guys, getting to know you a little bit better, and of course, trying to get better at F1 2021 along the way. We get to talk everything from Formula 1 and also see me kind of get a little bit better slowly over time. But link will be down in the description if you do want to get involved. What I'd like to discuss with you today on this channel is the overall ratings of the drivers, because between me and you, some of the drivers on this game are heavily overrated and some of them actually are very underrated too. So we're going to go through each one of the drivers, look at their overall rating and see whether or not they are rated where they should be. Now, each of the drivers gets categorized 4 different ways. Their experience, which is how many races they've had over the course of their career. Their racecraft, which is based on how many positions they've either gained or lost on every single one of those races they've been in. Their awareness. Now, this is their ability to avoid incidents and penalties and not pick up penalty points. And then their pace, which is just a measure of obviously their best lap times every single weekend compared to the rest of the field. And I think more so compared to their teammate as well, because obviously they're in the same car and you can get more of a feel of where their pace is. So we're going to go through every single one of the 20 drivers, have a look at their rating, and you can tell me in the comments below whether you think people are too highly rated or not highly rated enough. Let's start off with the Williams boys, of course, George Russell and Latifi. And personally, I think they've kind of got this about right, although I feel a little bit sorry for Latifi because he is so much lower rated than Russell. The actual only thing I think maybe is a little bit high of these two cards is Russell's awareness. Obviously, he had that incident with Valtteri Bottas at Imola this season. I personally think that was kind of his fault, and he hasn't really been the best at keeping it on the track sometimes. So I think a 99 awareness is a little bit high, but I also think an 83 pace is a little bit low. You don't get the nickname Mr. Saturday for no reason. He is electric over the course of a lap, and I think his pace is incredibly good. And obviously we're all hoping that he's going to be in a Mercedes car next year, right? So I think that pace could have been a little bit higher up, but an 84 and a 71 for the Williams. Now, Haas, the two rookies, and I know Mick Schumacher won the F2 championship, but maybe a little bit slow rated, I would say. Like, I don't know. I was expecting maybe an 80 or so for Mick Schumacher, but then he is also a rookie. I'm not quite sure. Obviously, both of them very inexperienced in Formula 1, so both of them with 47s. And then the awareness, slightly more for Mick Schumacher. I guess that could be a little bit more if you look at the incidents that either one of them have been involved in. You'd say Nikita Mazepin's probably been involved in slightly more than Mick Schumacher, and therefore that's where that 81 comes in. And then the pace is a stark difference, and I think that's more than fair. Nikita Mazepin has had nowhere near the pace of Mick Schumacher this season. Let's move on to Alfa Romeo next, and Kimi Räikkönen, our first 99 experience. And you can't really argue with that. It does feel like Kimi Räikkönen has been in Formula 1 probably forever at this point. I'm sure there are many fans of Formula 1 that don't remember Kimi Räikkönen not being in Formula 1. Me involved in that, to be honest with you. I can't remember a season without Kimi Räikkönen in it from when I started to really get into Formula 1. So, little bit insane that he has got that 99 experience. And Giovinazzi there with a 54 experience. I think, again, these ratings are fairly reflective. I think Kimi Räikkönen's overall is maybe a little bit too high. I don't think Kimi Räikkönen is the same Kimi Räikkönen as 3-4 seasons ago. I don't think he's anywhere near as quick as he used to be. And an 86 pace and an 87 overall is maybe a little bit kind to Kimi. But you can't really blame him. Kimi is an absolute legend at this point, and giving him an 87 rating for what would probably be his last season in Formula 1, I can kind of see why they've done it. Let's move on to AlphaTauri, and personally, I think both of these ratings are a little bit insane. Firstly, Yuki Tsunoda is rated 82 when Mick Schumacher is only rated in the 70s. How on earth has that happened? Mick Schumacher won the F2 championship, by the way, and beat out Yuki Tsunoda to that championship. So I'm not sure how Yuki Tsunoda's managed to grab such a massive boost in his overall rating. Maybe it is because he is just at a slightly quicker team, has picked up points this season, but even so, not quite sure about that. And as much as it pains me to say, I think Gasly might be slightly overrated in this game. I think when you look at some of the other drivers on the grid, and as we look at more of these overall ratings, I think maybe he's slightly overrated. I quite like the fact that he's got that racecraft, got that pace. It's the experience which is letting him down, but if you're saying that Gasly in a couple of seasons' time is going to have that experience and therefore be like a 95, 96 rated card, he's probably not going to be winning world championships anytime soon. And I think Pierre Gasly is at a little bit of a crossroads in his career. He's not going to be able to go back to Red Bull, in my opinion. It's going to be very tough for him to gain on this 90 rating, and I think maybe it's a little bit high for where he is in his career. I know he's won races, but at the same time, I'm not quite sure about it. Let me know. I think Pierre Gasly is one of those ones that's definitely going to divide opinion in the comments down below. Let's have a look at Ferrari. And again, I think criminally underrated. These two, 88 and 87 overall. I personally think, and this is going to be very controversial, I personally think that Ferrari have the best two drivers as a pairing on the entire grid. So I thought they'd be maybe a little bit higher rated than this. Charles Leclerc picking up an 88 and Carlos Sainz picking up an 87. I think you could easily bump both of these up by a couple of points each, to be honest with you. I don't like the fact that Carlos Sainz has lost out on pace. I know that his qualifying hasn't been great this season, but I still think he's incredibly quick on his day. And I like the fact that they've got equal racecraft as well. I think these two drivers could be on a par with one another. I know there's only 1 point in it, but I think they're pretty much on exactly the same level as one another. But who would you have highly rated more, Leclerc or Sainz? Let me know in the comments below. Which one of these two drivers do you think is actually the best of those two? Because I think it's going to be very, very close with them by the end of the season. Then we move on to Alpine, and Alpine, I've got two really highly rated drivers for me. I don't think Fernando Alonso should be an 89 rated. I know I'm saying this as he's coming to life in Formula 1 and has just like picked up points consistently over the course of the last few races. But again, I just think he's a little bit older now. I don't think it's that same Alonso that we saw a few years ago in Formula 1. I don't think he's got the same pace. I don't know if he'd be able to win races. That's the thing. If he was still able to win races, and I mean, like, if he was in a Ferrari, if he was in a Mercedes, would he be beating Hamilton, Verstappen, Leclerc? I'm not so sure. I just really conflicted with Alonso at the minute and not sure where I stand on him as a driver in Formula 1. I think he's just past his best, and there's an opportunity there for a rookie to come in and really make a seat for himself at Alpine, and Alonso's kind of in the way of that at the moment, in my opinion. But I don't think you can argue with the numbers overall. He has got that experience. We've seen that his racecraft is very, very good. He always picks up places. He never seems to drop backwards. It's always looking forward for Alonso. His awareness, I can't think of massive issues that he's had or massive crashes that he's had in recent seasons. And his pace, of course, is still there. So it's kind of a difficult one to argue with. I think he's just a little bit highly rated on this game for me, but not too much. Like, I can see where that rating has come from. And then Esteban Ocon, his form's dropped off a cliff after the last few races, apart from the Great British Grand Prix, where he finally was able to pick up some new points. So I'm hoping that his pace will slowly increase over the season. Obviously not the most experienced driver on the grid, but his racecraft and awareness really highly rated, just showing that, again, Esteban Ocon, in a similar way, is always looking forward, always making up places on the grid and driving exceptionally well in that Alpine when he is comfortable in it. And now he's finally getting a new chassis, got into the car, maybe is getting back into the rhythm of it. So I could see Ocon getting higher and higher rated over the next few seasons, but I think he's about right for this season. Aston Martin, Sebastian Vettel. Again, I don't really know where to stand on this one. I think maybe he's a little bit underrated, but he did have an atrocious season last season. Whether that was his fault or Ferrari's fault is very much up for debate. And then Stroll, I also think is maybe a little bit underrated. If you've got Esteban Ocon as an 86, I don't think Stroll's too far off where I would position Esteban Ocon in the tier of drivers in Formula 1. So being 3 less is maybe a little bit harsh on him, but maybe it comes down to that awareness and that pace. Maybe he doesn't quite have that race pace or that one lap pace in qualifying that Ocon does have, and obviously the awareness. He has had a few little incidents over the course of this season. Again, I don't think you can really blame Azerbaijan, like the fact that his tyres just blew up, but that all does come into it. The fact that he's picked up those points on his license as well. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think Stroll maybe is a little bit underrated. Moving into the top 3 teams then, Lando Norris with a 91 rating. I know that he's having a blistering season this time around, but that seems very, very high for me. I know that he has been astonishingly good this season and by far the best driver on form on the grid for me, but a 91 rating already seems very, very high indeed. His experience still at a 60. Obviously, he hasn't been around for too long, the same as George Russell. And then his racecraft, he has been picking up positions. And I've actually got a video coming out on Lando Norris. And you can't argue with this racecraft score. He just goes forward. He will always qualify in the top 10. And he will always make up positions every single race this season. He has been looking forward, making up positions. And it's just been incredible. Awareness 99 as well. Really hasn't been involved in too many incidents. Has picked up quite a lot of penalty points though. Is edging towards the 12 penalty points that you need for a race ban. So I'm not sure how he's managed to get such a such a high awareness score, whilst also being one of those drivers that picks up a lot of penalty points over the course of a season. And then Daniel Ricciardo, I think he'll be gutted that he is rated lower than his teammate. Only a 90 rating, 80 experience, 94 racecraft, 91 awareness, and 88 pace. Taking a real knockdown, Daniel Ricciardo. Obviously, still one of the most highly rated drivers on the grid, but being lower than Lando Norris, I think will really, really hurt for Daniel Ricciardo, especially when people are still talking about Daniel Ricciardo and whether or not he will be a world champion at some point in Formula One. Let's look at the Red Bulls then, and we move on to our highest rated driver on the grid, Max Verstappen with a 95 rating, Sergio Perez with an 87. And I think Sergio Perez, considering, you know, Norris is a 91, Gasly is a 90, at 87, maybe a little bit lowly rated. I know that he hasn't won too many races, but he's been in Formula One for so long and been so consistent all of the time. Maybe it's just hurt him a little bit that he's always been in those midfield teams and he's never really been able to progress until this year into a team where he can win races consistently and get on the podium. And he still hasn't really shown that yet in a Red Bull, has he? He's had an incredible season in a Red Bull, don't get me wrong, but hasn't continually been on the podium maybe, and that's where he can really step up that pace and that racecraft. Obviously, 81 experience, maybe a little bit low. I thought maybe it would be a bit higher. It does seem like Sergio Perez has been around forever as well. And then the awareness at 84. Again, can't really argue with the awareness score. If they've picked up those points, then they've picked up those points over the course of the season. And again, Sergio Perez over the course of this season has been in a little bit of trouble, has touched a few different drivers over the course of the season, talking Norris and Leclerc, and obviously span out in the sprint qualifying as well. So has had his issues over the course of this season. So his awareness has maybe dropped a little bit because of that. And finally, Mercedes with Lewis Hamilton equally on 95. Oof. I thought that Max Verstappen was going to be the highest rated driver overall. I thought they were really pushing themselves out there and saying that Max Verstappen was likely to win this season. But it is Hamilton equally on 95. And I don't know, I think Hamilton should be rated slightly higher than Max Verstappen. I know on the course of this season, it's looking like Max Verstappen might win the title this time around, but Hamilton has been incredibly consistent over the last few seasons. You don't become a 7-time world champion without being incredibly good. And I know there's a rating for this year, but Hamilton being equal with Max doesn't quite sit right with me for some reason. I think he could have just been maybe that one step higher. His experience at 92, racecraft at 94, awareness, and of course his pace at 98 is incredibly, incredibly high. And then Valtteri Bottas actually sits third in the overall driver standings, and I don't think he's going to come third in the overall driver standings this season. So I think that could be the last hurrah for Valtteri Bottas with an overall rating of 92. But if we look at the driver standings versus the Formula 1 2021 ratings, this is where it sits. So Hamilton and Verstappen obviously equal, and they're nigh on equal in the driver's standings as well. Norris is the 4th rated driver, and it actually sits 3rd in the driver's standings at the moment, but still for me, I think Norris is maybe just a touch overrated. Similar to Gasly, maybe just a touch overrated. I could see, you know, Norris and Gasly being around the same as Leclerc and Sainz. So either Leclerc and Sainz need to go up a couple, or Norris and Gasly maybe need to come down by 1 each as well. I think it's a little bit closer in that midfield pack than they're making out. Because if you look, Leclerc is 6th in the Drivers' Championship, but overall rated 9th in terms of the drivers on the grid. And I know it doesn't take into account the car that they're in and the fact that they, you know, Gasly isn't an AlphaTauri after all. If he was 6th in the championship right now, he would be absolutely flying in that AlphaTauri. But at the same time, I think he's maybe just a little bit highly rated. And similar with someone like Russell in 14th, is he that much better than a Stroll? I don't think so. I think Russell and Stroll are fairly comparable. Similar with Ocon, I think they're all in and around the same. So the fact that there is such a big gap between Ocon and Stroll, 3 points is quite a lot on this scale between these guys. So I don't know. Let me know what you think. You can use this graphic here to sort of judge where you think these drivers should be in the driver's standings in the Formula 1 2021 ratings. But as I said, I am going to be streaming Formula 1 2021 a lot on Twitch. So make sure you follow that link in the description. Let me know, who do you think is the most overrated driver, and who do you think is the least rated driver on the game? Who deserves that buff into the next season? Who deserves to maybe drop down a few points next time out as well? Thank you so much for watching. If you could leave a like, that would be amazing. Subscribe if you are new, and I will see you next time.